Thank you for joining us. We are PMO Learning, and we have been running this session, the PMO CV Getting Ready for 2023, beginning of the year, where a lot of people are thinking about career goals and, making changes. And one of the things that we thought we would do is pull together a session that just purely looks around the CV, but even more than that is obviously it's very much focused on PMO. Why am I here talking to this? What gives me, from my background? I one of the directors at PMO Learning, also director of House of PMO. I worked in PMO recruitment for a number of years, and it's quite a lot, nearly 20 years. So I've seen a lot of CVs in my time, and given a lot of people advice on, how to put together a good CV that will work, not only to, to get through the, the initial sifting process, as I think we all know is very much about people using database searches and bots and things like that, but also really, to put together a CV that is not only just going to get your foot through the door to get the interview, it's also really just to hopefully makes you think a little bit differently about your CV, because I think a lot of people just think it's a real pain to update them, and I want to kind of change the way that you think about them, because it really is a document that stays with you for your entirety of your working life, so you kind of grow to love it. So I've done a lot of stuff around careers advice for PMO people, and advised on different career aspects and things like that. So been around the block a few times, so hopefully I'll be able to give you some words of wisdom that you'll be able to use in your own careers. Okay, so what we're going to do first of all then is we want to look at a CV as a thing where it's going to demonstrate your depth of skills and experience. That's ultimately what we're all there for. But also the CV is about making sure you are presenting, the right kind of level of PMO that you're working in and what you're looking for. And also, for a lot of the time, it's actually helping people to understand what kind of PMO person that you are, because I think we all know that there's lots of different types of PMO practitioner out there, and how the best to put that across on your CV so people understand, what kind of PMO practitioner you are, and give you some of that general advice to get through to shortlist. So before we get into talking about the CV, the way that I've always tried to explain to people, what we're trying to do here with a CV is it's kind of like your shop front, it's your store, it's your market stall. And it's about, you choosing what you're putting in that in order to be able to get the best return of what you're trying to do with it. So it's not a document where you should be putting down absolutely everything that you've done, or indeed absolutely everywhere that you've worked. It really does come down to what it is that you're trying to do right now with your CV, and that's the thing that you focus on. So rather than thinking, this is just something that every time I do a new job or get a new job, I update it and so on and so on. But actually, when it comes to wanting to use your CV right now, it's about thinking about it all again. So it's not just about putting on the last role that you've been working in. It's about looking at the entirety of it again, because it's been used as a document to do something for you specifically right now. And that could be that it's a different kind of job you're going for, a different type of PMO, the next level up, whatever it might be. So we think about the CV as being a shop front, and you are the shopkeeper and deciding what you're going to put in there. So what we always recommend that people do is to start with a personal stock take, and this is good if you one of those people that's not really taking stock, no pun intended, not really taking stock of you and your PMO career and all of that kind of stuff. Is that you just keep adding stuff in. Might be now the time to start with a blank sheet of paper, because I'm going to show you how you can do a stock take, because you've got to understand what it is that you're selling. You're selling yourself, yes, you're selling your skills and experience, but it's about being able to understand what does that really mean. So let's just say we're going to start with a blank piece of paper, and to make that, to start somewhere, you can just literally just start with a mind map and thinking, right, okay, here I am in the middle. who am I? What have I got? And this is all around, remember, creating a PMO CV. So you can use it from like being right, okay, I'm just literally going to put myself in the middle. One of your mind maps might be particular, I'm going to do it by job. And you might have spokes coming off that look at the different roles and responsibilities that you might have had. And then from that, the kind of activities that you perform, and from that, your skills, and so on and so on. So that you can see how a mind map becomes pretty busy. But this is about taking everything that's here, everything and the experiences that you've had and the skills and everything that you've got, and just dumping it all out there. See what it is that you've actually got. So it's quite hard, blank piece of paper. People, if you keep a journal, even better. One of the things we get people to think about is maybe perhaps your timeline, which is what most CVs tend to be. It's like where you've worked and when. But also we've got some questions, we can give questions to you, and I'm going to show some of them to you that help you and prompt you to think about what it is that you've got. The other thing that we always say to people too is actually when it comes to thinking about who you are and what it is that you've got, there you are in the middle. There's you've got your organizations that you've worked for, current and past. You've got domain. And I don't know how many people, when it comes to things like domain, it's to do with not industry sector, but it's domain is things like, IT, or if your PMO is part of, business strategy or something like that. So it's the domain that you're working within. And then there's the wider marketplace. So when it comes to thinking about the CV, it's got to be, you're pulling on and drawing on lots of experiences. So it's how do you get all this kind of stuff in the CV? So what we've got is a series of questions and prompts that help you to start thinking about, well, okay, so if I'm going to write a CV, what kind of things do need to be in there? And from our years experience of looking at CVs over many years, it says sometimes it's the most obvious stuff that's missing. So I want to share some of those with you. So what you've got here on the screen now is just some, a few slides. And like I said, you probably want to have a look at some of these at your leisure. So remember to sign up in PMO Learning, keep in touch, and we'll be able to get you on the newsletter list, and then you'll be able to get hold of this stuff. So with this one, it's just questions and prompts to get you thinking about you in the whole context of PMO. Because again, I think one of the things that many people struggle with is that you're only, you might have only had maybe one or two different experiences of PMO. It could be that you've worked in two organizations and you've just had those two experiences. But actually, when you're looking to put a CV together, you've got to remember that, you're going out, you're going out into the wider world. And it's just that understanding of, well, what is it that people generally tend to look for? So some of these questions get you thinking, I hope, about you. So for example, you start with the basics, which is what is your role title and what part of business do you work in, and where do you first most closely align in terms of what type of PMO? Is it project, program, portfolio, enterprise level? It's these basics that we'll need to be using in the CV, so we might as well get that all down. And then we look at, well, what's the most important aspects of the job that you're doing? Let me just go into a little bit more detail so you can see. So what are some of the most important aspects of the work that it is that you do? And again, you can start to look at some of these questions and start to jot down some ideas. So that's why this blank piece of paper comes in handy. And we also look at things like what makes you credible. So, what certificates and accreditations do you have? What academic qualifications? What about your year's experience within the PMO and within the sector that you're working within? How do you find your level of seniority, any achievements? And then we've got principle, values, accountabilities, trust, and being genuine. All of these things should be thinking, yeah, okay, so I need to have a think about this. I mean, what are my values? And, because again, this is partly about getting the CV together, but it's also about getting you ready in readiness for interviews that no doubt come after this amazing CV you're going to put together. We also get you to think about, well, what kind of support service are you offering at this very high level? Because we're then starting to go into, into the nitty gritty and the details. So what helps you to do your job and what makes you successful? These are all things that we probably don't spend enough time thinking about. And that's why we want to, give you that it's a time to reflect before you actually start putting the CV together and giving you some advice and some guidance as to, what you can be doing. So, for example, some of the questions that we've had, before this session is, first stage reviews of CVs get done by a bot. How do I ensure my CV gets through? And to be honest, I think most with database searches, you're probably not surprised that it's keywords. So we have to ensure that not only are we putting across, all the really good skills and experience that we've got, we've also got to make sure that it's hitting all of these dreaded bots and databases that organizations are using, both recruitment agencies and organizations themselves. So some of this stuff that we're going through is thinking about those keywords and how we bring them into life and how we bring them into the CV. So you can see from probably some of the questions that have been put to you that you can start to see where some of those key words will be coming. One way to think differently about how we can draw out where our experience has been is to perhaps look at some of the text that exists. So, for example, we've got this one here, which is many of you will recognize is P3O. Hopefully, many of you on the session, if you're working within PMO, you've come across P3O, which stands for Portfolio Program and Project Support Officers. Here, what you're looking at is the key services that are in Appendix F in the back of the book. So this allows you to have a glance through and to think, yes, this is, these are the ones, these are the key services that I offer, our PMO offers. And that's going to give you some insights into the kinds of experiences and skills you're going to be sharing within that CV. So again, if you imagine, a blank piece of paper and you're going to pick off the some of the key areas here, what you would do, you'd say, right, okay, so yeah, we absolutely do things around standards and methods. Blank piece of paper cut into a number of boxes, standards and methods in one box, and then underneath it, you'll probably be catching a few keywords about, well, what kind of standards? What kind of methods have you been working with? Are you following methods? Are you creating methods? Do you do any work around maintaining those? You can start to see where, the level of detail is getting, to that point where this is the level that people want to understand that you're going to be able to offer to their organization. So it'll all come together, but this is an idea of, how do I know what kind of services, people will be expecting to see on the CV. And if you think about the role around PMO, there's a lot of stuff. And just looking at this particular slide that I put together, just because I was just trying to think about all the different areas of which PMO get involved. And you can see here, like, bottom, get my left and right, bottom right, you can see you've got PMO management. So there's stuff there. If you're a PMO manager, there's stuff that you'll be doing. You've got program management, portfolio management. You've got things related to leadership and management. You've got up there on project management. You've got a whole host of different things that you, as a PMO practitioner, could be getting involved in. And I've literally tried to think about every single aspect. So it's good to have a browse through there and to think about some of these wordings. Do they spark off other things that you do? Remember, we're taking a stock take. And the idea is that we're trying to dump down every single thing that we are potentially going to use in the CV. We won't be using it all, but this is potentially going to be used in the CV. And another thing where this activity is really useful, gets you prepped for the interview, because it really does make you think about and reflect on everything that you've been doing within your PMO career to date. So again, it's just a vast amount of stuff that PMOs are involved in. And then finally, the other thing that you can look at to give you some ideas is the competency framework. So hopefully some of you have seen the competency framework. And if not, you should absolutely look for that one on available through Amazon, but also directly from the House of PMO. And here, what you've got is a competency framework. So hopefully you're familiar with a competency framework. A lot of PMO people up to this time, before this existed, probably did a competency framework self-assessment on a project management one, which is normally aimed at project managers. But PMO people could take it because obviously, you're involved in projects. But this has come along. This allows, to look at all the different competency areas that are expected of PMO people. So that, again, this allows you to think and look and read through all the different competency areas and what's expected, the kind of tools and techniques that you use. It just gives you the ideas of, you know, have I got absolutely everything? And hopefully at the end of it, you get a great big piece of paper where there's literally it's you there on a pen, and this is everything that I've thought about. So what do we do with it? So one of the things that you know, in addition to why we use this the competency framework for that, one of the questions we got is that I want to learn about where my skills gaps are to improve my CV. And this is what a competency framework is for. It allows you to do a self-assessment that shows you exactly what it is that you've got, but also where your gaps might be about against the standard or the expectation of somebody working within a particular type of PMO role. So that's what a competency assessment, a framework assessment is for. So that's just hopefully answers one of the questions that we've had. So when it comes to the CV then, so we've got a lot of stuff that we want to get in there. And generally, you know, what you're trying to do is get it into 2 pages, which sounds like, right, okay, so that sounds like it's going to be a tricky job. But we generally have, you know, a couple of types of templates and things. And the trick is to keep it simple. You know, very clear, black and white, lots of nice white space between writing, you know, just to really help people be able to see, you know, what your experiences are. So we had a question from people about CV formats. So yeah, I mean, in terms of having one that's you've had for a long time, I hope that you really do take this advice on board and start from scratch. So don't just take what you've already got, get a new template and put all the stuff in you've already written. I think it's time to have a good old refresh and to really think about what it is you're trying to do. So again, you know, this is the simplicity of, you know, the CVs, because ultimately, and again, having spent a number of years in recruitment, the way that people look at CVs, so you've got to bear in mind that, you know, sometimes for a job, you may have 100 people applying. So that's 100 CVs that you've got to look at, and you won't look at them in detail. You do an initial sift, you know, is literally seconds, and the bits that you see highlighted on screen there are the bits that you glance at as a recruiter. So generally what I tend to do, or did tend to do, don't do it anymore, thank goodness, really difficult job, and certainly in this day and age, is you scan to see the what people have written around the profile and whether it jumps out at them. You also glance at where they are, and you then look straight down onto the employment experience, just to see what they've been doing more recently, just to get a feel for whether we're in the right ballpark. Yeah. So if it's looking like that, that's when you will go back and have a proper read through from the top right down to the bottom. So that's how people tend to do it. So it's kind of quick glances at places. So we know that if we're going to spend time and effort writing a CV, we know that we need to get that top bit and the employment experience looking bang on, in order to be able to get through that initial sift. And interestingly, again, with some of the database and bot approaches these days, you know, that's where they're also obviously scanning, but you know, hitting it again from the top. We're going to talk about next is getting some of those keywords in prominent places. So let's have a look then at getting into some nitty-gritty to help you actually put together the CV in those 2 important areas. So let's look at the personal summary first of all. So that's that bit at the top. And over the years, I managed to get to a point where I've got a formula which will really appeal to lots of UPMO people that like some process and structure and things. So I've got a formula. So here it is. So what we do, we look at it's an accreditations and qualifications, and then we look at role, then we look at domain and function, then sector, then years experience, and then specialisms. I'm just going to mute you, so but if you do want to ask a question, by the way, get it in chat and I'm more than happy to pick it up as we go along. So this formula then, why this formula? Because we know that these are some of the ways that, you know, that the searching gets done. So let me give you an example. And these are all factual, by the way, you know, so this is the other thing with personal summaries. We don't want any of that kind of, that's what I call fluff and puff, which is basically the stuff where you'll see in everybody's profile, you know, like team player and, you know, good stakeholder management and, you know, all that kind of thing. So here we go. And let me show you how it goes. So you start off with the qualifications and then you've got your titles. Yeah, because obviously if you're going to apply for a PMO manager role, you want to be able to make sure that it's very clear. Now that might seem like rocket science and saying, why would you even, you know, not do that? You will be surprised at the number of people that do not even put the job titles in of the job that they're applying for, which is why we say that with a CV, you will tweak and change this depending on what it is you're applying for. If you don't do that, you're coming up against the bots and you're coming up against lots of different competition where people are starting to do this, you know, so they will get through that initial sift, and it's as simple as that. So you've got the job, the qualifications you've done, because we know employers love them. You know, so there's the qualifications. Here's the job title. Now, the job titles don't necessarily have to match your job title that you've currently been working under. Because again, we know that we have weird and wonderful job titles, you know, in and around PMO. So you will use the job title that is most aligned with what the marketplace is, and also obviously the job that you might be applying for. So again, you know, you're using things like you can use a few different ones. You know, so here we've got PMO manager and PMO lead, just so we're covering off both bases. So there's the accreditation and the role, and then domain and function is essentially, you know, when I said about the domain being that you, or what kind of PMO that you're in. So in this respect, it's a program led PMO. And then the domain is around IT. Yeah, so you've got that bit in there. Then your sectors. So then you're like talking and trying to put some numbers in here. So you want to show some seniority, you can give some you know, some numbers in terms of experience. But you can see there's the sectors that somebody's been working within, because again, keyword matching, but also the human that reads it will also be looking to see if there's anything that kind of jumps out at them. So there's the sectors. And then we've got this bit about specialisms. Now, what I find the most around PMO is that you'll always have something that you are particularly hot on, or something that you are known for. And it's always nice to bring in some of that kind of factual stuff there, which is, you can see with this one. Yes, we do mention stakeholder management, but it's in a context, you know, that's bigging you up around, you know, around not only that, but exec management, talking about some governance stuff there and reporting and insights. It's all factual. There's nothing in there that feels very, you know, opinion. Yeah, that's yes, I'm a great team player, or you know, yes, I'm a great manager, or whatever. It is keeping it within the context of that program office experience as a PMO manager, 20 years experience in these sectors. So hopefully you can see that that's quite a hard, you know, it's, you're going right in, hitting a lot of keywords, and it's very factual, and that is, you know, is looking tip top in terms of you're giving me a lot there in just a few short sentences. So have a look at the other bits then is about the employment history. Now, I just want to give you these two. One of the things you don't tend to see a lot of, and I think it totally has a benefit, is giving people some context around the PMO that you're working within. Because there are so many different types of PMO, it is sometimes better just to give people, just give me an idea about what kind of PMO. So when I start to read about your roles and responsibilities, I've got a mental picture. I've got something, context that gives me a lot more about your roles and responsibilities and your skills. Because I can see that actually, you know, in that second one there, that you're responsible for a unit, and I've got numbers. I can see how big it is, you know, and this kind of stuff is not, it's not confidential. You can use these kind of things. You know, you're not divulging anything that wouldn't be, you know, available in the open market if anybody wanted to go and have a look. But again, it's always interesting to me that people will put you know, that your job title, company you're working for, and the dates, and they go straight into like the roles and responsibilities, and it's like I have no clue about the type of PMO and the context of it. So it's worth, you know, having a think about that. And I also want to think about how you can talk about the bullet points as well. So you've got a bullet point around stakeholder management. It's a classic one around PMO, that you've got a lot of stakeholders and you're dealing with those people, but actually just having a line like that. Or can we give it a bit more detail in terms of, you know, again, giving me a chance to, you know, understand broader what the skills and experience might be around stakeholder management, and, you know, where's the benefits and the pluses and the successes that are coming out of that. And you can see that the difference in the way that you can write about something has, you know, can be a lot more harder hitting. What I can't do in this particular session, but we do have a training course. It's actually really good value, but I would say that £25 for a lifelong PMO CV course that you have access to, that will show you lots and lots and lots of examples of how you can put together your career history, because there are a number of different ways to do it. And essentially what you're trying to do at a very top level, if you know what job it is that you're looking for and you can see the role profile, essentially your CV has got to be showing some of the skills and experience that they're looking for, has got to be on your CV. Again, you say, well, that's just rocket science, you're not telling us anything you didn't know. You'll be surprised just how many people just don't do it or can't see it. Yeah, so it's a simple matching game, but then it comes down to how you choose to write about some of the things that you're going to put on there. So if you think about the stock take that we've done, you know, when you look at all the things that you do and you think, well, I can't put all that on the CV, that's why you're looking at, well, what am I applying for and what do they want to see? And that's what I'm going to put in. Yeah, yes, I've got lots of other things and that'll come out at interview, but this is about trying to get through the foot through the door. So you're not just sticking everything in, you know, this is about especially curated for this particular role that you might be going for. So I had a number of questions around CVs, and one of them is also about the way that you write. And it should always be third person, not first, which is a very simple, you don't write, I did this and I did that. You're writing it almost as if you're writing about yourself, but not, you know, referring to, you know, it's in the third person. It's the professional way to do them, you know, and certainly for people that are working in a profession like PMO and project management, you know, you're very much writing it in the third person. The other thing is, you know, the database sifting. Hopefully we're giving you some ideas there, and it is about the keywords, you know, and it's making sure that you're getting enough in there, you know, to be able to get through that database sifting. It's as simple as that, you know, you just come on to keywords. You had a question about covering dual roles, and we get a lot of this where you might be doing two things. You might be, I'm only doing a bit of a PMO role because I've still got another day job. And generally what we say about that one is that you've got to think about what it is you want your CV to do now, and what it is that you're trying to do in terms of what role you're trying to apply for or get. And what you do with that, you just switch them. So you make sure that you talk about the PMO related project support role, whatever it might be, first, and then second, you say, I've also have duties around X, Y, and Z. So again, it is about trying to catch people and at the right level. Of course, when you put something in an order, we know that the ordering is important. So things at the top of a list are probably more important than the ones at the bottom. It's the same thing that applies when you're writing about two roles. And again, when it comes to general CV advice around things like 2 pages, it is 2 pages. You know, people don't want to and don't have time to be looking through many, many pages. It is up to you to curate what people are looking for on the, you know, looking at in those 2 pages. We say that the most important things that you've done are the most recent, so that's where you will give more information. And the jobs that you've done in the past that keep, you know, getting further and further down, you can literally get away with one line, which is just, this is where we're, this is the, you know, these are the dates, and a one line of what it is you did, and then they get shorter and shorter. So you're always giving more to the most current roles, because that's what people look at, and they just say, you know, I want to look at what you've got more recently, because that's the things that are going to be most applicable, you know, to the role that you're going for. And again, you know, sometimes when it comes to things like the language that you're using, to really think about the way that you know, think about how you start sentences. So let me see if I can just show you in this particular example here. I'm just going to just highlight a little bit. If you look at the languages, it's you know, defined, chaired, managed, led. It's those kind of things that you know, think about in terms of how you're writing, and being very proactive, very active words rather than being really passive. So when it comes to what to keep in and to leave out, these are some of the who, what, why, where, when, and how questions that you know, you should always be asking. I'm sure you've also come across, certainly in PMO, that we're trained to say, so what? I'm sure you probably have something like that, or something similar. You know, we're there to question. So again, it's like, you know, what is it that you're trying to do with it will dictate on what it is and we're keeping in and what you're leaving out, you know. So again, it really does depend on the context of what it is that you're going for. But the problem is, I hope, if you've done some personal slot take, you're gonna have a problem about, well, what do I keep out? Because I definitely know what I've got that I could put in. You know, so hopefully that helps you in terms of, you know, you're gonna be spoiled for choice and the great things that you can talk about. Let's have a look at some of the questions. So how can I apply for a more senior role if I have the experience but not the job title? It comes back to the question that we were talking about before in terms of the job titles. So the thing is with this one is that the experience does need to be really clear. So if you're saying that you have that experience in a senior role, it has to be absolutely cleared and not buried. But as I said before, is that you can use multiple titles in the profile, but you can also use them in the career history as well. Because we know that there's so many titles out there that are not reflective of what it is that you're actually doing. The number of times that I've seen roles like, you know, they might be called a program coordinator, but when I look at what they've been doing, I thought, well, actually, this is more of like a PMO manager. So again, you know, when it comes to write your career history and you've got to have your job title in, you do put the one you've got, because that messes up, you know, HR references and all that kind of stuff. But again, we've got to think about keywords as well, and getting across to people that are reading it. So you can put in brackets after your real job title, this is, you know, equivalent to PMO manager or PMO lead or whatever it might be, to help people. Now, the interesting thing about that is that, well, is that, you know, is it being truthful? Absolutely, because you're putting it there in black and white, and they can choose to ask you that question in an interview. But also remember, you've made the experience very clear. So, you know, that's how you generally tend to get around something like that. How do you account for gaps in your career history? Very simple with this one in this day and age. Be open and honest and truthful. Generally, organizations are fine with this now. You know, if there's a reason why you've had some time out in the market, just tell them what it is. You know, just say, I mean, we have so many that you might be taking time out, childcare. You might be looking after an elderly relative. You might be taking a sabbatical because you've had enough. Any of that kind of stuff is absolutely fine. Just be clear and be honest, and allow people to ask you questions in the interview. You know, it's certainly not like it was about 20 plus years ago where people used to say it's a bad thing, but just make sure you explain it. How to find the balance between underselling and overselling? Just go for overselling every time. You can't go wrong. But obviously make sure that you are doing it. It's well justified. You know, but you're not lying, basically. But you know, again, it's just, I think sometimes we're guilty about not selling ourselves strongly enough. And sometimes when you have got a panel of PMO people going for the same role, and it can be just, you know, that somebody is just that little bit better about being able to just sell or share, you know, what it is that they've been doing, you know, and just managing to do just a little bit better job than somebody who actually, you know, I'm a little bit more introverted, I'm not used to blowing my own trumpet. Sometimes, why not just next time, just go for a little bit more of the oversell than the undersell. We also had a question about PMO certifications, because we talked about how important putting the qualifications in, because we know employers like them. Just to bring this one up today, is that these are the two main ones now. P3O again, which most of you are hopefully familiar with, and also the more recent new qualifications from the House of PMO are more aligned with the competency framework, and they come in 4 different levels, which is PMO administrator, PMO analyst, PMO manager, and PMO director. So that it's more aligned with the roles that you most generally find within a PMO. So obviously the House of PMO ones are relatively new. They've been out for about a year. The PMO director one was just launched just at the end of 2022. But PMO Learning offers both of these courses. So if you are thinking about how can I make my CV look better if I've not done any training around PMO, those are just a couple for you to think about. We did have a question, even though it's about CVs, what can I do about finding some advice about how to set up a PMO? If you're going to, if that is a question, if you're going to pick any of these 2, it's P3O, because that one's focused on how to set up a PMO, whereas the essentials ones are very much about the individual and what job they do within the PMO. So a lot more practical on how you do the job, whereas P3O is very much about setting up a PMO. I mentioned the course that we have, and it's just something that you can have access to. It's a lifelong access. There's a lot of information in there to do the personal stock take. All those questions that I showed you, there's a lot more questions for you to go at. How to put together that personal summary, there's a lot more examples, and also the career history, and putting that together. How, what's the best way to lay that out, how to generally try and hit the what it is that people look for. And just finally, really a question that we've had before, which was, it's fine if you're going to apply for a particular role and you can see a role profile, but what should you do if you are wanting to put together a CV that will go onto a job database, or any of those kind of things, or onto LinkedIn, where you're not necessarily looking for a specific job? What we say about that one, and again, there's some more information in the course about this, but we'll just say and just leave you with this. I'm just about to finish. There's probably another couple of minutes. So if you have got a question, please do make sure you drop it into chat, and I'm more than happy to do that before we close off. But what do you do when you haven't got a job to apply for? What is the best way to go about putting together a CV? What you will generally find in any kind of PMO role is that you can go and have a look at any kind of job on a job board, or just a role profile or anything like that. You will generally see it's the same kind of same listings of roles and responsibilities. And this is why the competency framework is good, because it's got the four role profiles are in the back, and that will give you the idea of these are what are considered to be the core things that a PMO administrator needs to do, an analyst needs to do, a manager and a director. So essentially what you can do is make sure you're covering off some of those those key things that you would expect to see in that role. So for example, if you are a PMO analyst, you can bet that number 1 on your list is going to be around reporting, analytics and insights. Yeah. That would be probably the best thing to start off with when you're looking at prioritizing what you're going to have in your roles and responsibilities. You would probably go for that. And then you would probably then look at things like methods and processes and procedures and things like that, and how you put those kind of things together. And then if you looked at the competency framework, you'll see there's a lot of support, what we call delivery support. So then you'd probably start to pick off things like risk management, planning, issue management, change control, all of those things that are considered to be the bread and butter of PMO supporting services. So again, here's a link back to what we said about right at the beginning of the personal stock take. But if you are looking at things like P3O, if you're looking at things like the competency framework, that these are what's classed to be the core things that PMO people do, and that will give you enough insights to think about what you might put in your generic CV that you want to put out on LinkedIn or add to a job database. So that is a whistle stop of PMO CV. Hopefully it's given you some food for thought in where to start with it. I've got a question from Suzanne. I've always been led to believe that bullet points on the employment history isn't a good thing. Do you think it makes a big difference if you decide not to go with bullet points? All I would say, Suzanne, is there's absolutely no problem with bullet points. I don't know why somebody's taken against bullet points. The whole reason why you're using bullet points is to create that sense of space and white. Yeah. It's just that thing of, if you look at the way that a paper is laid out, and it's just the way that the human brain, certainly when it's looking at things on screen, is just to give me a bit of space, give me a bit of whiteness, don't try and pack everything in. And it's just sometimes it's the bullet points that draw the eye, and and you want to make a particular statement about something. So again, you don't have to use bullet points, but if you're not going to use them, you're going to have to make sure you've got enough space in between the roles and responsibilities that you're that you're wanting to put down. Okay. Any other questions before we leave it for today? Yeah. Okay, so I hope that you've taken enough practical stuff. As I said, I will be sharing this recording and the slide deck, and those questions no doubt are the things that you want to see, but hopefully you can see, do some personal stock takes, just take stock of who you are and what it is you've got to offer before you rush into creating a CV that's very simply formatted. You'll focus on crafting that personal summary at the beginning. That is the bit that you can absolutely nail, and I've given you the formula for that, and you can check that back when you get the recording and the slide deck. And then thinking about that career history. Yes, there's other stuff in between about key achievements and how wonderful and successful you've been, but it is those two bits where you concentrate most of your efforts, because that's where you'll get most of the return from. So good luck, and remember, keywords, it's bane of our life, isn't it now? But that's computer says. But anyway, have a good rest of your day. Thanks for joining me, and yeah, please make sure you keep in touch with PMO Learning. We're always sharing good stuff about PMO, but yeah, thanks for now. Take care.